The shrimp fork was still cold in my hand when I felt it. That eerie stillness, the kind that settles right before a tornado peels. Deciding off your life and pretends it was always loose. The ballroom hummed with marble echoes and velvet medallions. A place where egos wore cufflinks and Chardonnay flowed like denial. I sat at table 7, right beside Mr. Kessler. Robert Kessler, CEO of Grenner Systems. A man whose handshake once decided a $90 million logistics deal. My dress was black. Practical, neckline high enough to say, "I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to make sure your warehouse doesn't collapse." And somehow, before the first toast, I already knew this would be my last gala. By title, I wasn't special. Operations liaison. A role that sounds about as exciting as a tax seminar, but my name lived on page 42 of a 300-page defense contract, listed under essential continuity. Corporate called it a keyman clause. I called it invisible ink. You don't see it unless someone's stupid enough to shine a flashlight on it. I was that flashlight. And before I go on, let me pause the orchestra for one thing that actually matters. 97% of people listening to stories like this haven't hit subscribe. I get it. We're all ghosts scrolling between breakdowns. But hitting that button keeps the lights on for the crew. Telling stories like this and reminds us someone still notices the invisible ink. Now, back to the linen napkin chaos. I'd been with Wallace and Bray for 12 years, long enough to know who refilled the water pitchers. Long enough to know who lied on quarterly reports. I was there when the printer room still had a fax machine, when people still made eye contact. My job wasn't glamorous. But it mattered. Every Tuesday, standing calls with Grenner procurement. Every Friday, shipment redundancy reviews like a surgeon spotting tumors. Every month, recalibrating performance benchmarks that saved millions and padded bonuses for men who forgot my name, especially Jared. Jared was new. Jared wore loafers without socks. Jared called women over 40 tribal knowledge assets, which is Silicon Valley code for "we'd fire you if HR could stomach the optics." He looked at me and saw a salary line to delete. He didn't ask who wrote the service level stipulations. Didn't ask who salvaged the Grenner contract after 200 tank batteries were misrouted to Fresno. He saw bullet points instead of emojis and decided I was past my software update. The last few months were a slow bleed. Cheryl from finance-gone. Raw 1 from systems restructured. Slack. Permissions vanished one tool at a time. HR. Stopped replying. The Friday donut order shrank by 2 boxes. A quiet campaign of disappearance. The kind you don't notice until your badge stops beeping and no one asks why. So I printed the contract. Not the summary. The whole damn thing. Highlighted clause 17.4 in yellow. Slipped it into my tote bag with the grace of a woman who knew exactly where the landmines were buried and just needed someone dumb enough to dance. And then there was tonight. The gala. The pageantry. The fiddling while Rome's HR department burned. Kessler leaned toward me over his 3rd glass of wine, asking about regional onboarding flows. I answered like always. Clear. Competent. Just above robotic.
He didn't need fireworks. He needed dependability. And
I'd spent a decade being the human duct tape between his systems and our C-suite's fantasies. Across the room, Jared laughed too loud with a circle of partners I'd onboarded myself back in 2016. He never looked over, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge I existed, which fit the pattern. Ghosts don't get to haunt the living until someone realizes they're dead. I looked down at my plate. Veal. Cold. A sprig of green meant to distract from how underseasoned it was. I thought about Cheryl, about Raw 1. About all the people who left carrying boxes of family photos and 0 severance. And I felt it. Not sadness. Not anger. A slow tectonic shift beneath my ribs, like something deep inside had decided it was done being still. It started with Cheryl. One Monday, she just wasn't there. No goodbye email. No sheet cake. Just a post-it on her monitor. In careful script. They asked for silence. So here it is, that same week. Raymond's calendar went blank. HR said he'd taken a voluntary opportunity to pursue personal endeavors. Corporate poetry for erasing a man over Zoom. Jared had been VP of operations for 7 months. His first initiative? The fat cut.
He said it during all hands with the same grin he used for gym selfies captioned "No days off." Didn't name names.
Just talked about trimming redundancies and post-pandemic alignment. Everyone still with a desk smiled. Like hostages. Jared hated legacy. Legacy systems. Legacy protocols. Legacy employees. He loved LinkedIn engagement. Slack statuses that said crushing it. Surprise one-on-ones that felt like pre-funeral consultations. My first real warning was quiet. I went to pull the SLA reports I had reviewed every Friday since. Obama was in office. Gone. Archive. Not moved. Access denied. It sent a templated response that read like ChatGPT's evil twin. Consult your department lead. I was the department lead. Or I had been. That's when I opened the Grenner folder on my personal drive. Not the cloud. The one since to a backup. I didn't advertise. I scrolled until I found it. The Beast. Dated March 2011. Coffee poured. Yellow highlighter. Out. Page 40-2. Clause 17.4. Continuity of service. Provision. The following individuals are designated as essential personnel. My name. First. I stared at it like an obituary for someone I hadn't realized had died. The clause existed because of a disaster back in 2010. PM ghosted mid-project. Grenner nearly lost weeks of shipments. After that, legal insisted critical roles be cemented. They added my name because, as they said, you're the one who actually holds this house together. I printed the page, folded it once, slipped it into the canvas tote I carried to meetings Jared never invited me to. By the Gala, my erasure was nearly complete. Dashboard access lagged. Invites disappeared. My manager replied with HR-flavored gaslighting. Appreciate your flexibility, Ellen. I wasn't paranoid. I was being erased. The only thing I didn't know was the date they'd scheduled my execution. So I waited. Quiet. Like a blade behind glass. And Jared kept cutting. Whistling. Black tie. Events are where partnerships are sealed. But all I felt was untethering. The gown itched like guilt. The heels pinched like deadlines. I smiled for photos, knowing the lifeboats were reserved for the beautiful and the blind. Kessler sat beside me. Bourbon neat. He nodded. You're the reason we survived the 2014 backlog, he said. I haven't forgotten. Across the room, Jared never looked my way, not once. Like, I'd already been deleted, like my name was gone and the cursor was blinking where it used to be. And the thing is, he could have acknowledged me. A nod. A wave. A shred of corporate decency, but he didn't, and that's when I knew. But silence is louder when it's deliberate. And I knew in my gut the decision had already been made. I was just the last one to be told. Still, I kept my back straight. I clinketed my glass during the toast. I didn't fold. Best no one notices invisible ink until it bleeds. It came between bites off. Vec cold, rubbery, overdosed. A knife had just met a bone. It shouldn't thave when my phone buzzed in my clutch like a distant warning siren. I don't check messages during dinners with clients. That's one of my rules. But something in the vibration felt off, longer, more insistent, like it knew. I slid the clutch open and thumbed the screen. Jared M. 8:44 p.m. Pack up Monday. We're streamlining. Services are no longer required. No greeting, no punctuation, not even my name. Just services like I was a vending machine past warranty. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. There was no cinematic gasp, no shattered wine glass, no soft jazz pause, just stillness. Second of stillness that comes when a blade finally exits the skin after years of pressure. I looked at it for 3 seconds, took a breath through my nose. And then, without turning my head, tilted the screen toward Kessler. He was in the middle of swirling bourbon in his glass. He paused, read the message once, then again. His eyes didn't widen, his lips didn't part. He just set the glass down on the white linen, folded his napkin once, and leaned in like he was about to discuss something as mundane as freight capacity. Do you remember Clause 17.4? He asked, voice low, calm, deadly smooth. I nodded. He pulled out his phone, some matte black model that probably doubled as a Satella-Tetranspert in emergencies. Begin typing, deliberate 2 thumbs, emergency, no typos. Then he showed me the screen to Jared, and I believe you just terminated our master service agreement as well. See you in court. He didn't press send immediately. He looked at me first. That question lingering in the air between us like smoke. Are you sure you want this? I didn't smile. I didn't link. I just nodded again, barely more than a tilt. He sent the message. And in that moment, new silence was born. Not the awkward kind, not the ceremonialish before a speech, but a silence with gravity. A silence with consequences. Somewhere across the ballroom, Jared's phone buzzed in his jacket. He didn't check it right away. He was too busy lawing at his own story, surrounded by people who didn't know the floor had just fallen out from under him. Kissler turned back to his plate like nothing had happened. Took another sip off bourbon, picked up his fork. I went back to eating. There was no panic in me, Norwich, just a cold sense of completion, like watching a missile finally leave the silo after years of waiting underground. It wasn't vengeance, it was protocol. Jared thought he was streamlining. What he actually did was set off a legal landmine crafted by people who understood that continuity wasn't a buzzword. It was a contract, and he just violated it. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need Torg. Jared's arrogance had fired Thegan. All I did was make sure it was pointed at the right clause. Around their room, people kept chatting, toasting, cutting into overpriced protein, but I felt the shift like wind changing before a storm. Jared finally looked at his phone. His face didn't crack. Not yet, but his brow furrowed, his jaw ticked. He stepped away from his circle toward lobby, moving quickly and without his usual swagger. Kessler smiled at the dessert menu. They're doing crème brûlée tonight, he said, like we were talking about weather. They always burn it, I replied. He grinned wider. Not the only thing getting torched. The crème brûlée was burned. Of course it was. But I ate every last bite like I was spooning justice out of a sugar-crusted coffin. Jared never turned to his seat. His chair sat there like a question mark with nones were. Napkins still folded, wind-touched. From across the ballroom, I'd seen him. Read the text, his jaw clenched so tight. His bod probably creaked. Then her stood up abrupt and stiff anti-sappered into the shadows of the lobby. Like a man realizing mid-dance that his shoelaces were tied together. The rest of the gala played out like a string quartet on the Titanic. Waiter spoured coffee, toasts. Clinketed, speeches dragged on. But under it all, you could feel the shift. A subtle ripple beneath the tablecloths. Something had gone off. No one said it, but glances started darting like nervous fish in shallow water. Someone whispered too loudly to the CFO. Phones began vibrating a little more than usual. And me? I sat there like a woman at her own wake, composed in full. When the awards were announced, I clapped politely. When they flashed Jared's name in the donor slide, I took a sip of lukewarm coffee and smiled just slight libus. I knew. Grenner's legal team didn't need a calendar invite to start moving. Those people are XD and still treat weekends like combat zones. By Saturday morning, they were already digging through archived emails. Past amendments, call logs, change requests, renewal terms. Sunday evening, someone in our finance department texted me a screenshot of a Slack message that simply read, "Who approved removing that clause holder?" No one replied. Monday came the way a hangover does. Loud, cruel, and full of consequences. It showed up to the office at 8:29 a.m. sharp as always, hair neat, blazer pressed, contract copy still folded neatly in my tote bag. I nodded to the receptionist. She didn't make eye contact. That's when I knew it was already over. By 8:37, a guy from facilities, Mark, poor kid, showed up at me cubicle holding a small cardboard box and looking like he'd rather be any wearials. Hey. Oh, Ellen, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I was told to help you. Collect your things. No need, I said, pulling out the box I kept under me desk for seasonal mug rotations. It travel light. I dropped in my charger, my stress ball shaped like a shipping crate, one photo of my niece and nothing else. I didn't take the plaque from 2018, let them keep their whole trophies. I didn't say goodbye to Onion. Why make ghosts out of the still living? At the security desk, I removed me badge and slid it across the counter. The guard looked confused. They said some and would walk you out. No need, I repeated. The front door opened with a hiss. The sun was too bright, the parking lot too quiet, but I didn't linger. I didn't cry. I didn't even curse. I got in my car, shut the door, and waited 5 full seconds. Then my phone buzzed. Kessler 9:02 a.m. Sit tight. This gets fun. That was it. No emojis, no signature, just 6 words with the casual menace of a trigger warning. By lunchtime, whispers were leaking from Grenner's vendor relations team. The termination was flagged. Internal compliance raised concerns. An email chain surfaced showing Jared had made unilateral staffing changes without constung legal, violating the terms of engagement for a Tier 1 contractor. I didn't need to lift a finger. All I had to do was not interrupt the machine while it chewed through him. That afternoon, my inbox was locked. My Slack profile blinked inactive. My name was removed from the weekly meeting roster, but the thing about trying to erase Aki's name is sometimes that name is Theon that unlocks all the consequences. It wasn't gone. I was detonated by Tuesday morning. Wallace and Bray's lawyers had already entered the first stage of corporate grief, denial with a side of white-knuckled panic. They sent a memo to Grenner claiming the clause in question, Clause 17.4. Continuity of service provision was contextual and non-binding under the current scope of vendor relationships. They even had the audacity to suggest the wording was outdated, referencing personnel no longer central to operational workflows. Here's the kicker. My name wasn't just scribbled in the margins. It was achieved right there, bolded with a timestamp and initials. From 3 executives, including the now retired general counsel who used to call me the only adult in the damn building. And unlike most of the contracts Jared skimmed between reps at his standing treadmill, this one was never amended. Not once. Not in 12 years. Grenner's reply was swift. 1 sentence, 14 words. Your firm has breached contract terms. Formal complaint and demand for damages incoming. By noon, the lawsuit was filed. Not threatened. Filed. The number hit like a bomb. $38 million. Immediata projected. Losses, government penalties, and potential delays in 5 military supply chains due to the severed continuity. But it wasn't just the dollar sign that did it. It was the fact that the breach was so stupidly preventable, so embarrassingly reckless, that PR couldn't even spin it. The firm's general counsel reportedly slammed a binder across a conference table and muttered, "You fired that clause holder?" Like he just found out Somione accidentally donated the company credit. Line to a fake orphanage. Internal audits began within hours. Her logs were pulled, email trails were scrubbed. Slack channels went reddenly. Everyone was digging for someone. Anyone could say they signed off on my termination. Didn't find anyone because there wasn't anyone. Jared in all his eclipse glory had acted unilaterally. No legal review, no leadership sign-off, no due diligence, just vibes. He tried to pull rank, of course. Sent an all-hands email claiming the clause had aged out, that he was fully empowered to make strategic personnel decisions in alignment with post-pandemic restructuring goals. But HR wasn't biting, legal wasn't biting. And Theboard, they weren't just not biting, they were sharpening their knives. A week later, an internal email leaked. 4 words in the subject line. Wo proved firing Ellen. The thread had no replies, not even a single, let mekek. Just a chain of executives quietly choking on their own omission. And me? I was on my porch, tea in hand, watching squirrels decimate my bird feeder. I didn't gloat, didn't toast, just let the sun soak into my knees while Grenner's legal team calmly dismantled every excuse Wallace and Bray tossed their way. By Friday, the firm's stock dipped 6 points. By Monday, their biggest West Coast client canceled a contract renewal. Someone in comms had the brilliant idea to call it an unfortunate misalignment of internal protocols, which is legally ease for we hit ourselves in the face with a rake. Jared stopped posting on LinkedIn. His last update, excited to lead our next phase of growth, was now a grave marker floating above a battlefield he didn't know he'd started. No one blamed me because I hadn't pushed the avalanche. It just stepped aside and let it fall. They tried to hide it at first, shoved through whole mess behind a velvet curtain of legal ease and press silence. But $38 million doesn't go quietly, and neither do government contracts. By the following Thursday, Wallace and Braceboard was herded into an emergency meeting that bled well past midnight, the kind where no one finishes their peligro and someone inevitably gets cornered in the hallway sobbing into a branded stress ball. The minutes leaked. Investor reps from at least 3 funds-demanded heads, not metaphors, actual personal terminations. One board member apparently asked, dead serious, "How do you accidentally fire someone named in a federal continuity clause?" Jared, in a last-ditch performance, tried to frame it as a miscommunication between HR and operations. He threw around words like fluid restructuring, climate, and alignment friction. But it didn't land, not this time. Not with every C-level sitting there staring at printed contract with my name on it. So they placed him on administrative leave, which is HR's version of slowly rolling you in bubble wrap before tossing you off the roof. His office was emptied overnight. His parking badge deactivated. They didn't even let him send a goodbye Slack. The General Counsel, realizing his name had been on too many CCED threads and too few action attempts, resigned before sunrise. No announcement, just vanished. His assistant told someone he'd decided to focus on family, which I guess is what you say when your inbox has Beckham evidence. Audits began in earnest, not polite kind either. The kind where finance combs through meal reimbursements and it pulls full text logs from every internal channel dating back 5 fiscal years. Half the firm went silent overnight like rats realizing the lifeboats were reserved. And then came the cherry. On the corporate Sunday, Grenner's PR department issued a single-paragraph statement of industry trades. It was clinical, bloodless, and brutal. Grenner Systems confirms a vendor continuity breach with Wallace and Bray. We are currently pursuing remedies as outlined in our agreement and have transitioned Doparian oversight accordingly. No spin, no dancing, just confirmation that we'd screwed the pooch on a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal. They were now in open pursuit of scalps. That same day, buried in my inbox between a coupon from Michaels and my Neeks Girl Scouts fundraiser, came an email from Anonymous at WUB by internal com. Subject, no subject, you warned them. They didn't listen. That was it. 7 words, but it harder than all the loss with Scomband. I sat there for a long moment, rereading it, thinking about every meeting I'd sat through where I'd flagged risks, filed compliance updates, submitted continuity assessments. All of it either ignored or repackaged and presented by someone with a better Jolene and a worse understanding of logistics. Now, in some basement war room, my name was finally being spoken, not with reverence, not even with respect, but with regret. It wasn't satisfying, not exactly. It was something quieter, deeper, like watching termites finally collapse the porch Yo told them about 5 years ago, and I didn't need a headline. I didn't need credit. All I needed was the sound of their panic echoing down the halls used to keep standing. The invitation came by courier, not email. An embossed envelope tucked inside a navy folder bearing Gren's logo and raised silver dot, just my name. No miss, no preamble. Inside a hand note on thick card stock. Lunch. I treat. Just us. RK. There was no RSVP button, no location link, just a time. A date, and the name of a small bistro I hadn't been to since it catered for one of our earliest logistics summits. Back then, Kessler was just a regional director with a maptitude to his brain and an allergy to incompetence. Now he was CEO of few whole damn machine, and still remember it. Waitress who got his order wrong once in 2013. I showed up 2 minutes early. No tie, no bodyguard, just a clean linen shirt and a glass of iced tea sweating beside Aspral notebook. No laptop, no lawyer, no PR rep perched behind the ficus. It wasn't business theater. It was real. Ellen, he said, standing, shaking my hand like we were sealing a packet instead of greeting for lunch. You look unbothered. I'm getting good at it, I said, taking my seat. Didn't talk about Wallace and Bray right away. Or Thelasute or Jared. He asked about Minnie's, my garden, whether I still matted those sweet potato biscuits I used Tobering to supply her. Meetings. I asked him if his warehouse team ever figured out pallet tracking software. I warned them would fail during leap years. Hallod, he remembered. I'm offering you a position, he said. Director of Continuity, it's sires to define. You set the hours, the escapee, the title structure. I don't want optics. I want stability. I waited. A beat before answering. What happened to your current Director of Continuity? I asked, sipping water. He smirked. We were hoping to invent the role with you. Theffelder slid across the table. 6 pages, no fluff, no NDAs that doubled as burial shrouds. Just clean lines, clear numbers, and a salary that made me blink twice because it wasn't just generous, it was respectful. He watched me scan it, then said, You can take it home. I shook my head, reached into my own bag and pulled out something heavier than it looked. The old Gren contract, still folded, still highlighted on page 42. It laid it flat between us and tapped. That clause. Keep this, I said, just in case your next VP can read. He did in law. He just nodded solemn like I'd handed him a family heirloom. I flipped it back to the offer sheet. Everything looked right except one detail. He grabbed the pen from the check presenter. 2 things, I said, crossing out a line. First, I don't want the word Ogacy anywhere in my title. I'm not a ghost, and I'm not some artifact you dust off when systems fail. Kessler nodded. Done. And second, I pick my own successor. When the time comes, he blinked, then grinned. I didn't expect you to be thinking that far ahead. You always do. We didn't toast. There was no dramatic signature moment. No waiter interrupting with cake and fanfare. Just a deal made in daylight between 2 people who knew what silence cost. I lift the old contract on the table. Thanks smudged slightly from my thumb. If that done its job. Now I would do mine on me terms. They lost it officially. Venues dropped. On a Wednesday morning, tucked inside the 3rd paragraph of AWOL, Street Journal write-up about vendor mismanagement and the rising cost of corporate oversight. Wallace Embrace name was bolded. The way shame usually is when someone forgets that contracts aren't just paper. Their promises. Grenthorne Systems had terminated engagements with immediate effect. Non-negotiation, no grace period, just one sentence. From their legal department, this vendor failed to honor continuity obligations and has been deemed non-compliant. Wallace embraced stock full 11% before lunch. By close of day, analysts estimated $250 million in long-term losses once you factored in ripple effect. 2 government audits, 1 canceled aerospace bid, and 3 clients quietly initiating. Review of partnership terms. Inside the firm, chaos grew roots. CFO tried to spin Iton an internal email as a mutual disengagement, but no one bought it. You can mutually disengage when you're Theon holding the smoking gun with your name etched into the grip. Jared's LinkedIn, once a smug stream of thought leadership. Drill and Jim selfies went dark. His profile photo disappeared. His banner, once a filtered caption building Operation Alexels, was replaced with a blank gray box. Rumors flew. Some said he took a strategic sabbatical, others that he was consulting independently. But insiders knew he was last seen boxing up his standing desk accessories while waited like bouncers outside a nightclub or deadbeat interns. Whispers. Reached me through back channels. One allegedly muttered during a board meeting. Next time someone says key man clause, I'm tattooing it to my forearm. But by then, I wasn't there. I wasn't on their call logs or in their Slack threads. I wasn't being CC'd or quietly looped in. I was gone, and that was the point. I spent the next month working part-time from my back porch, if you can call occasional strategy. Calls and invoice approvals working. My new Gren contract didn't include punch cards or performance reviews. Just a clear directive, keep us standing. The rest off time, I read books I never finished and did my late summer tomatoes. Drank coffee that hadn't been reheated 3 times between meetings. No alarms. No team building workshops. No Jareds, one afternoon while the sun warmed the balcony. And the neighborhood kids made a noise like hope down the street. A brown parcel arrived. No return address, none it. Inside, a frame, black walnut, glossy glass. And behind it the original Wallace and Bray Granth contract, page 42, facing out, clause. 17.4, highlighted in faded yellow. My name L&D Reener, still legible, still standing. I set it beside me, poured a second glass of finino, and leaned back in my chair. The breeze was soft, the silence clean. Andy thought not of revenge, not of fury, not even of triumph. Just this. They should have asked who the key man was before pulling the trigger. You're there all MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.